Good morning, everybody. My name is Slaven Klobuchar for the European Committee of the Regions. Thank you for joining us at this seminar organized by the European Commission, CINEA, and Committee of the Regions. We're going to be talking about CBRES, which is a newly established program whose objective is to foster the uptake of renewable energy by providing financial assistance to renewable energy projects in cross-border areas between member states and regions. Before we start, I would like to give a few technical information. If you're not speaking, we would kindly ask you to turn off your microphones. You will be able to speak towards the end of the meeting where we're going to be having a Q&A session. We are recording this meeting as well, so in case you would not like to have your face recorded, please turn off your camera. We will be sending the link to the recording of this webinar later today. We will be also sending all the participants registered the presentation that you will be seeing today. Throughout the event, we will be gathering questions, so you're free to pose any questions in the chat, but you will be also to speak at the end of the conference, and at that point, you will please raise your hand and we will give you the floor. During this event, we are going to hear from, first of all, Vasil Stoyanov, Policy Officer from European Commission, who will give us the policy context of this program, followed by Ms. Beatrice Koda, Head of Unit of European Climate Infrastructure and Environmental Executive Agency, CINEA, working on this project. After that, we're going to hear from Gianluca Ferreri, Program Coordinator for this program. And finally, Paul Grandot will give us some examples of eligible projects in this for this project. I would start off the webinar by giving the floor to Vasil Stoyanov, who will be joining us online.
Thank you very much, Slaven. Good morning, colleagues. Very good to be part of this event, even though by virtual mode. My name is Vasil Stoyanov, and I work in the European Commission in Directorate General for Energy in the unit for renewables. I am one of the officers which is responsible for this new instrument that we are going to present today. And I'm very glad that we have a wide audience today. And I hope that the information that we will present will raise awareness of these new options for cooperation between member states in the area of renewables. I will start with my first slide. I will try to keep it really concretely and to the point. The window of cross-border renewable energy projects, which are part of the Connecting Europe facility that we're going to discuss today, is part of the wider policy context on decarbonization in the EU. And the core of this context is the European Green Deal. So proposed by the Commission in 2021, the European Green Deal aims as a final objective to make the continent climate neutral by 2050, and as a middle step in this trajectory, the aim is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by the year of 2030. Now, this is very important, and the renewable energy is playing also quite a significant part. Everything is fine with my presentation, right? You can hear it because I'm hearing. Okay, good. I was hearing maybe somebody did it on mute. So indeed, renewables play a very significant role in this endeavor, in these policy objectives, and the wide options of boosting renewables and reaching this target of minus 55% are also covered and are also part of the topics that we would discuss today. Why? Because the cross-border cooperation between member states means untapping the potential between countries for boosting renewables and for investing into renewables deployment. It's clear that we have to step up significantly our efforts in deploying of renewables, and this can only be achieved if member states really use the maximum potential that they have. And currently, being dominated by mostly national measures. The deployment of renewables shows that this doubling and tripling of the deployment rate can be achieved, including also by further cooperation. Now, on the next slide, I would like to show the second important and main pillar of the policy context, which is the Repower EU. So Green Deal has been around for a couple of years. It's clear, the objectives are set out. But last year, we came across another challenge, which is the war of Russia against Ukraine, which forced the EU to come up with this Repower EU plan. And this is a roadmap on how to reduce the dependency of Russian fossil fuels and at the same time fast forward the energy transition. Now, there are three pillars. One is energy saving and energy efficiency. Second is massive acceleration of renewables. And third is diversification of energy supplies. We are concerned mostly by the point of massive acceleration of investment in renewables. Clearly, the Repower EU map is leading us to the same objectives of climate neutrality as the European Green Deal, but through a different path. So it's a different road getting us to the same objective. And part of this road is that the renewables have to play even higher importance and even higher role. So the reactions usually when the Commission proposed the European Green Deal were that the ambition in renewables is very significant. However, with Repower EU, this ambition has to be even further increased, which brings me back to the second point. We have to look for options on how renewables can be put on the ground more quickly, more efficiently, in order to deliver the results of replacing 59 BCM cubic meters of Russian fossil fuels and natural gas by replacing those amounts with renewables. On the next slide, I would like to point in particular the role. So what does the Commission do in order to increase the share of renewables and to support the faster deployment? First is by increasing the ambition also on legislative level. So the latest proposal by the Commission on revision of the Renewable Energy Directive, which is from May last year, increases the target from 40 to 45%. So the European Green Deal proposals raise the target from 32 to 40%. Now the Repower EU proposal raises the target from 40 to 45%. So clearly we want to give a signal to the industry and to the investors, making sure that they are aware that this policy priority is translated into binding legislation, and this should give a strong indication to the investors and to the developers of renewable technologies on the demand and on the need of faster deployment. First. Secondly, one of the biggest challenges for short-term increased deployment of renewables is the regulatory framework. Our assessment shows that there are financial resources, there are enough interest, there is enough interest from investors. However, usually across countries, the biggest problem before speeding up the renewables deployment is indeed the hurdles and the barriers which have administrative nature and which are related with the permitting procedures. So we have come up with a legislative proposal, first, on how to change the directive and to soften and to make the permitting procedure more flexible. And secondly, we have proposed in November emergency regulation, which was adopted in December last year. And this emergency regulation tackles the most imminent and the most short-term barriers before renewable deployment, which have to make and to untap the pipeline of projects in order to make renewables taking place, renewable projects faster. So this emergency regulation is already in force, and we're looking forward to even higher speed of deployment in 2023. Now, this rapid rollout of solar and wind energy projects, which we aim to unlock by this legislative amendments, have to save and to replace an amount of around 50 BCM of gas imports. And here we come to the role of the renewable energy projects. Those projects can have a very wide spectrum of options. There could be smaller scale, there could be bigger scale. They could be focusing on one technology. They could focus on the whole value chain, covering different technologies, covering production, transmission, storage, and consumption. The point of the cross-border renewable energy projects is indeed that they are one of the missing pieces of the puzzle on how to reach these new increased targets. And the targets are not self-sufficient. The targets are also simply an instrument and a mean in order to achieve the higher objective, which is reduction of greenhouse gas emission and replacement of imports of Russian fossil fuels. So by this, I want to show you that the larger picture of the cross-border renewable energy projects is the most imminent, the most topical, and the most important challenge that we as EU face today, which is to achieve the objectives of the REPower and of the European Green Deal. In order to achieve this, we need to mobilize all instruments that we have in place. And the cross-border renewable energy projects are one of the instruments and one of the very novel instruments. So the Connecting Europe facility, which is financing this new type of projects, is in its first years of implementation in this specific window. Therefore, we are hoping that by making those projects popular, by giving the adequate support of those projects, we as Commission are going to unlock and to use yet another instrument in order to achieve these overarching objectives. Therefore, the importance of this meeting today is quite big, because we really are in the beginning of the implementation period, and we want to use every opportunity to raise awareness, to make sure that the stakeholders understand the importance of cross-border renewable projects, and we want to see more projects coming up. So my colleagues from CINEA will show you what we have on the ground so far. We have made the first steps in supporting those projects. We have outlined and given status to some of those projects. We have also started a few calls where we're going to financially support them, but the financial support itself is only a minor part of the bigger picture. We really want to see cooperation between member states taking place in the area of renewables. This cooperation should unlock the potential for offshore wind parks in the North Sea or in the Mediterranean. It should unlock the potential for district heating and cooling. It should unlock the potential for solar energy, which is then used to produce hydrogen and to consume the hydrogen somewhere else in Europe. These are only a very minor part of the examples which we want to see and which are addressed by this new type of projects, which are based on cooperation between countries. So we want to see cooperation, we want to see unlocking the potential of renewables, and we want to see significant contribution towards the achievement of the policy objectives, which are the Green Deal and the REPower EU. With this, I would like to move on the next slide, which is the which is already part of the presentation by Beatrice Coda. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for attending this session, and we're looking forward to your questions. And we would like to really make sure that you have a solid understanding of the cooperation between countries in the area of renewables, and that this workshop is also practical and will help you engage then with your interlocutors on national level. Thank you, and Beatrice, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Vasil. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Also from my side, I work in CINEA, in the unit which is responsible for the Connecting Europe Facility Energy, and in particular for the implementation of this window, which is called the Cross-Border Renewable Energy Program. I'd like to follow up already on what Vasil has already mentioned in terms of the urgency of the needs to step up cooperation between member states, between regions, and unlock the potential to step up the efforts in renewable energy deployment. So the cross-border renewable energy window under CEF Energy is a dedicated instrument to support this cooperation and to advance and make projects with a cross-border dimension real and put them on the ground. Before I will explain the, let's say, the rationale of the Connecting Europe facility and in particular of this window and what are, let's say, the main objectives and features, please allow me in the next slide to give you just, let's say, a very short introduction on CINEA. You might, let's say, not be familiar with CINEA, so the Executive Agency for European Climate Infrastructure and Environment. We are very pleased to be here with you today to explain and to outline the role that we have to support the European Commission in achieving the European Green Deal. Actually, our mandate is that we are an executive agency and we are in charge of implementation of a number of EU funding programs. You see here the programs reflected in the slide. So together with the Connecting Europe facility in the sectors of transport and energy, we manage other programs as well, like the Innovation Fund, which is one of the largest programs in the world for de-risking innovative clean technologies in the market. We are responsible for the cluster 5 of Horizon Europe, so research and innovation in the sectors of climate, energy, and mobility. We are responsible for the LIFE programs, which finances actions in the field of environment, climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and energy efficiency. We are responsible as well for a sector, or let's say an instrument under the Just Transition Mechanism, which is called Public Sector Loan Facility Pillar. And we are as well responsible for a program which tackles the challenges of the maritime and fisheries sector, which is called European Maritime and Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. Overall, we are responsible for implementing more than estimated 55 billion euro in the current MFF. And we are a very large agency. We are more already than 500 staff. Now, the fact that CINEA is, let's say, responsible on a central level for all these programs, which have, an important contribution in the policy objective to the European Green Deal, makes it that CINEA is also in a privileged position to work on synergies across programs and to foster collaboration between them on a practical level. In the next slide, I also want to promote the context, let's say, of these instruments, in particular for what concerns the support to the energy sector and to the renewables energy sector. Now, the instrument I have discussed and I presented in the previous slide, so the CEF Energy, the Life Clean Energy Transition, the Renewable Energy Financing Mechanism, they are very dedicated instruments, and let's say by design, they tackle different challenges related to preventing, let's say, renewable energy to come to the market. So they have all of them. They're very specific policy objectives. There's very specific rules, and they are complementing other important European funding programs, such as the cohesion funds, for example, such as the Next Generation EU, where by difference, these instruments do not have, let's say, renewable or energy sector objectives implemented by design, but they are rather ring-fenced in their resources and in their budget. So there are, let's say, two different ways of complementing. And if we move to the next one, we are going to get, let's say, specifically to the Connecting Europe Facility Energy Program, which is in the current multi-financial framework, a program for, let's say, that supports with an overall budget of more than 33 billion euro over the 7 years, the development and modernization of trans-European networks in the field of transport, energy and digital. It also has as a main objective to contribute to the decarbonization objectives of the EU, and also with emphasis on synergies across the three sectors. One important, let's say, one of the three sectors is indeed, in the next slide, we are going to see the Connecting Europe Facility Energy, which has over 5 years a budget of 5.8 billion euro approximately. And it is divided into windows. A window which exists for already quite some time, so it was already in the previous legacy program, relates to the support to trans-European networks, and in particular to projects of common interest, so projects in the energy infrastructure field which have a significant EU added value and a significant aspect of cross-border cooperation. And then the new window, what Vasil has already introduced, the so-called cross-border projects in the field of renewable energy. We will see, going to the next slide, that the features and the budget dedicated to this specific window in this specific program. So up to 15% of the total CEF Energy budget, so 875 million euro, subject to market uptake of the instrument and of the renewable energy projects, is earmarked for this window until 2027. So it could be also, let's say, increased or changed in the near future. As Vasil said, we are just really at the start of this program. This program, let's say, the rationale of this program is to really tackle, let's say, the difficulties and the challenges that existed in cooperation between member states in the implementation and in deployment of renewable energy projects, which would contribute to achieving the targets of member states and of the European Union in general to reach the target of renewable, as for the Renewable Energy Directive. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see that, in fact, let's say the main objective of this program is to tackle these challenges that have existed historically, and to promote and foster the cooperation between member states, or eventually between member states and third countries, based on the cooperation mechanisms that exist and that are legally established by the Renewable Energy Directive. So really the idea of this new window for cross-border projects is to promote, foster projects, in particular in the field of joint planning of projects, cost-effective exploitation of renewables, and therefore leading, let's say, to the realization of the EU target achievement. My colleague Gianluca will present later what type of projects, really, what are we talking about in terms of cross-border projects. So we'll go really in the detail to explain you that. So as Vasil already mentioned, another, let's say, strategic objective is also to foster cooperation between member states and regions for what concerns not only, let's say, standard technologies in renewables or technologies which are already quite established in the market, but can also, let's say, promote projects which are innovative. So innovative renewables are also fall under the scope of this new instrument. As well as another important objective is also the integration of renewables with conversion facilities. So we do not, this scope, let's say, of this program does not only cover projects on generation of renewables, but also larger projects of scope, which include RES integration with energy storage, with conversion facilities, can also be part of the scope, with the overall objective to contribute in this way to have projects realized on the ground that therefore, let's say, can contribute to the long-term decarbonization objective of the EU. Now, how does it work in practice? We are going to explain you in very much detail how the instrument is developed, what are the features, and how you're going to, let's say, apply to this program. But let me just briefly, in the next slide, give you at this stage just, let's say, a few key messages, and then my colleagues will present the details. So in order to tap into the funding, the financial support of Connecting Europe facility in this cross-border RES window, the process works in 2 stages, so to say. So once project promoters or member states or regional authorities have identified, have worked on a concept of a project, then they, let's say, they have to apply to what we call a status process. So projects first receive the so-called status. So there is a, let's say, there is an application for a project description, outlining also what are the benefits of having a cross-border cooperation in place in comparison to only, let's say, a project being implemented at national level. And once this application process is finished, the projects are assessed, and the projects which are retained are published in what we call a list, which is adopted by the Commission. And the projects that are retained in this list, then they can apply to a call for grants for works and studies under the CEF Connect CBRES window. So the funds that are let's say eligible for support by CEF are for works and studies. So studies meaning a support to the preparatory phase of your program. So if your project is still, let's say, in early phase of development. And another possibility is to apply for works. So it's really so to say, to put it bluntly, is really support for the construction phase of the project. There are different rules for that. So normally there is a co-funding of 50% for both works and studies. For works, there are also additional requirements, namely that, let's say, a non-commercial viability of the project at this phase should also be demonstrated in order to receive support. So the type of eligible projects that can be considered in terms of technologies. So all, let's say, so it is renewable generation based on any renewable energy source and related technologies. It could be wind, it could be solar, it could be geothermal, it could be ocean, and so on. The projects, they can relate to all sectors, so electricity generation, but also renewables in transport application or heating and cooling. And as I mentioned in my previous slide, the project can go beyond the support or to the generation, because also, let's say, other elements like storage, conversion, IT systems, and grid connection can also be included as a part of the project, provided they are an integral part of the project. They effectively enable the integration, and they are ancillary to a renewable generation facility. Important also to note is that, as Vasil already mentioned, it can be, let's say, a small project, it can be a larger project. There are no predefined capacity thresholds, locations, or technology type as for the CEF regulation. So here we have already, let's say, first message for you is that we have an application for the status. So to get, let's say, to this list, it's ongoing. The process is open, and we have a call open until the 3rd of May, if you're interested. And once, let's say, as I said, the list will be published, we will open, let's say, a call for works and studies. My colleagues will explain also the detail and the timeline later on. In the next slide, I'd also like to present another type of possibilities for support, for funding under the Connecting Europe facility. And this is what we call preparatory studies. So here it is a much, let's say, simpler type of call and type of, let's say, support. because here we tackle, let's say, the financial support to overcome obstacles which prevent cooperation projects from going ahead really at the very, very early stage of a project identification. So it could be, for example, technology survey, it could be how we better, let's say, prepare the cooperation mechanism, how could be, let's say, what are the costs related to that. And for this, CINEA opens regularly calls for what we call preparatory studies. These calls are also provide support of 50%. Let's say what is important is also that here it's a bottom-up call. It means it's not required to have what we call the status. So any project can apply in the early phase. And in fact, let's say the objective of these preparatory studies is also to make, let's say, projects which want to go ahead with a full cooperation mechanism between member states to receive, let's say, the status to make them then eligible later on for works and studies. We expect that the next call for preparatory studies will open in Q4 this year. And my last slide relates to some points of attention already at this stage. My colleagues also will explain the detail on, let's say, on projects and the features. So when we talk about cross-border nature of a project, it may or it might not be a physical connection, so a physical connection between member states. We will explore later on what are, let's say, other possibilities to have a cross-border project, even when there is no physical link, so to say, between two member states or between a region in the project. And by experience, even though we are in an early implementation phase of the program, what is important to keep in mind is that if you would really like to go ahead and use the possibilities for support under this program, invest time early on to work on cooperation between member states. Because this could be, let's say, has to be adjusted, has to be thought through very well already, let's say, from the very beginning. So do not rush, let's say, to have your member state support at the end of having put together, let's say, a concept of your project, but embed the work with member states and with the authorities early on in the project, in early phases of project implementation. I think I would like to stop here. There are already a lot of messages that I sent. I hope all was clear. But in the next presentation, my colleagues will present more in detail what are the features for you to help to get, let's say, further points of attention if you are interested to use this mechanism for, let's say, preparing a cross-border project. Thank you for your attention so far. And I give the floor to Gianluca Ferreri, my colleague in CINEA.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Beatrice. Already, indeed, you entering quite a few important aspects of the program. So now I will try to go even more into details and give you some practical examples as well of what potential type of project can be all about, and also go into the details of the conditions for the various goals, how they are, which are the type of goals that actually the mechanism, the program has put in place, and what is the timeline. So first of all, let's have a look in the next slide. What are these type of projects? So indeed, Beatrice was talking about there can be physical or non-physical cross-border. I think this is the first aspect that should be clarified. So the cooperation part is really setting up agreements between two member states or sub-national level, depending on the specific cases, depending on the competencies. I'll come to that in a moment. So there can be either project crossing physically the border, even in the installation of renewable energy, or also projects that are not physically crossing the border. What does it mean in particular? So you have on your left hand, if you can click on the animation ball, then you'll see really this left part of the slide are really the project we are where probably also the regional level plays into more into that, because it's really individual project where you have physical border or no physical border crossing. In case of project crossing the border, you can have the renewable energy installation part that is physically located across the border. One example was the one of the offshore wind park in the sea, where you have in some cases optimal areas for wind production, for example, with energy production, which is right at the border between two territorial seas areas between two member states, and it would be optimal to place a wind park that crosses the border. You can have similar situation on the land, where you may have installation across the border on solar PV, for example, photovoltaic, or other technologies. You can also have project crossing the border, not necessarily in the renewable energy installation as such, but in other components. For example, you may have cases of renewable energy production on one side and on the other side of the border, eventually different technology depending on the specificity of the regions on one side and the other side of the border, depending on the opportunity and the assets on the two sides. And then these two sides are connected. Connected, for example, if we are talking about electricity, connected via transmission line or distribution line, usually transmission when cross the border. Or if we are talking about heating, for example, the case of district heating, there can be a connection connecting the heating system from one side or the other side of the border. There are other examples if we think about green hydrogen production, where you can have on one side of the border a production of renewable energy, electricity, and this serves the purpose of creating green hydrogen still on the same side of the border, and then green hydrogen is dispatched on the other side of the border, where eventually it's used to decarbonize hard to abate heavy industrial areas, for example. So the other case, the individual project where you have no physical borders, it's indeed you can have more distance cases where, for example, two member states get into an agreement where one member state produces renewable energy and the other member state, who has got less favorable conditions, enters into agreement to share, for example, part of the cost regarding the production of renewable energy, and then gets part of the benefit, for example, via a cross-border PPA, even a virtual PPA. That is one of the examples. The cases of multiple projects, it's a bit different. It's a bit less relevant at regional level, because it's really about coming together to have joint support schemes, and this is usually via national auctions, so it's probably less relevant for this audience today. But it's also part of the cooperation, the possibility of cooperation agreement that are included in the Renewable Energy Directive. If you look at the next slide, let's have a look a bit more into what are really the criteria to get this status. So projects need to receive first the status, the CBRS status, so enter in an official list before they are able to be eligible, for example, to apply for CEF funding for studies and works, so technical studies and works. There is also the preparatory study code, which is a specific type of code for which we don't need the status. I'll come to that in a moment. It was quoted also by Beatrice. So basically, you'll see it on the slide. There are three main aspects. One is related to the cooperation agreement, and the other is more on the technical requirement. The cooperation agreement, what it is about, so it can be in any type of forms. There's no prescriptive templates or specific content that has to be in the cooperation agreement, although there are documents related in to the program, the so-called Commission staff working document. If you enter into the details and you want to prepare your project, you will see there are expected elements in these cooperation agreements. For example, the objective of the cooperation, the quantity, what we are talking about in terms of renewable energy generation, what is the scale. So there are quite a few details, and these are sort of expectation behind the cooperation agreement. But other than that, the form is fairly open. It can be something pre-existing on the project, or it can be something that is being drafted for the project specifically. But if it is pre-existing, it has to clearly be talk about an envisaged project that you are actually building up. So now we know that it's complicated to get it. For the status, to receive the status, we are not expecting necessarily already an agreement, but at least a written declaration where the two parties, or two or more, because there can be several member states or even third countries, into a single agreement. So, but they clearly show the willingness to enter into a cooperation, so to further work on a cooperation agreement later on the project. So the willingness to cooperate should be clearly expressed at the status level, and then later on there can be still time to work on the really the details and enter into fully fledged cooperation agreement. Now the cooperation agreement, as we are addressing also a subnational or regional scale audience, can in the cooperation agreement, this is intended to be at member state level, but there can be cases where the competency is also lies at the level of the regional level or land, for example, depending on the type of project. So in case this is demonstrated through the documents that you provide in your application, also the regional level can sign this part of the agreement. So, but it has to be demonstrated that the regional level has the competence to enter into such an agreement, and it's always better to have an express backing at the national level. Then the other two aspects, what do they mean? Basically, you will see if you are then interested to apply, you will see the details, but basically the project's cost should be lower overall than the benefits. So the benefits should outplay the cost. So it is worth entering into that project and financing it at some point. And also the project benefits are higher compared to a similar project, so an hypothetical project that would be carried out without the cooperation. So the idea is when you apply, you present a project that is set up around the cooperation between two bordering regions, for example, and then you present a similar case that is called counterfactual, to where the project would be carried out only in your own region, in your own member state. So the benefits of your project, of the CBRS project, the one with the cooperation, should be higher than the one that you would carry out in an isolated manner, so to say, so within your border. So it makes sense to go through a cooperation agreement, an instrument such as the CBRS type of project. So Basically, that's the main message I want to convey at this point. And then, if you would be interested, of course, you will see more the details. What does it mean? We can go to the next one. So, for the proof of cooperation, I've said it. The point is really don't stress too much about the formalities. So the format is free, although when you will look at it at the call requirements, we also provided a template that is free to use, but it's not a mandatory one. And indeed, it can be signed at subnational level. We know that in the setup, the institutional setup varies very much between member states in the EU. So in some cases, it is clearly for especially renewable energy that can be competence at lower scale. So land regions, depending on the setup. So if the competency in the domain, the policy competency is demonstrated, then we have to see also the cooperation type of agreement signed at this level. We can look at that. So the details on the technical aspects I've touched upon a bit. Basically, the type of document you will be asked to submit in the call is called CVA, is the cost benefit analysis, which follow the methodology that was drafted specifically for the program by the European Commission. What I was quoting, the Commission staff working document, you see it also in the slide 21/429. And if you go in the program web page, you will find all the links to download. And basically, it's got mainly 7 elements to go through, and these elements should be as much as possible quantified to see what is actually the total social benefit, socio-economic benefit of your project. And you will do the same for a counterfactual project, and the system is set up in a way that it automatically calculates all the aggregated benefits and see which one is most, which one is worth basically going through, either your project specific case or the one with the cooperation, or the counterfactual, which is the one without the cooperation. So it's also a tool to facilitate the decision for you to apply or not for a CBRS project, because then via this calculation you will see whether it is worth actually coming, trying to set up a whole cooperation agreement, and which is of course more complex than just doing a project at national level. So that's really the technical aspect. If we go more into the more wider picture of the program, so the CBRS program is really, as also Vasil was saying in his introduction, it is about facilitating the uptake of renewable energy production. So the renewable energy generation is the core of the mechanism. It is really what we should see as a project, the central pillar. It is to create new renewable energy, new generation of renewable energy to go towards the EU target, the Green Deal, the REPowerEU, so the path towards the decarbonizing Europe. So renewable energy generation is the center of any cross-border renewable energy project. Now the legislator understands clearly that there can be other elements around that that are important, that are crucial to facilitate the integration of this new renewable energy generation. So if there are additional components, for example, a connection of the renewable energy facility that you want to build in the project and to the electricity grid, or some aspect of storage, considering that the additional renewable energy will create is already creating a strong pressure in the electricity grid. So there will have to be a part of storage there to balance the flow and you know the uncertainty of the renewable energy production, which is not a continuous production of energy. It depends on natural elements. Typically, when there's no wind, well, there's no energy. When there's a lot of wind, you suddenly have a lot of energy production. Same for solar and other sources. So we understand that, for example, the storage can be an important aspect. But in the context of the program, of the Cross-Border Renewable Energy Program, these elements should stay really ancillary. So compared to the project that you propose, and they should be demonstrated that they enable the integration of the renewable energy part, and they are fully integral to the project that you are gonna propose. Okay, let's dig into a little bit more into the details of that. So you can see some examples. So not real cases, but maybe you can recognize some. So in the first two scenarios there, you have cases of project that are either fuel. So scenario one, project fully focused on the renewable energy generation. And for example, a geothermal plant or hydropower station, biomass, or a combination. There can be several technologies in the same project, so that's absolutely possible. This is clearly a project that would fit into the CBRS program, of course, provided that also the other conditions, notably the cooperation part, are also there. Second project, or the second scenario, you have a project that combines the renewable energy generation part with the transmission and, for example, the storage I was talking about. So typically, for example, you may have projects, offshore projects, offshore wind projects that they need to connect to the grid at some point. And this part of connection can be part of the project, provided that it's still ancillary. I really stress this because it's really one of the aspects we have seen recorded in the first year of the program. The other components should stay ancillary compared to the main component, the core component, which is the renewable. You can have similar cases where you have hydrogen production, so green hydrogen. Production from the renewable energy installation that you want to set up in the project to create green hydrogen. How do you do it? One of the ways is to set up an electrolyzer. And also this part can be part of the wider CBRS project, provided that is ancillary compared to the rest, and including also the storage component and other components. So this is still a scenario where you would see fitting into the CBRS program. If we move to the other scenario 3 and 4, you have cases where a project is fully focused on the transmission, on the storage, or the storage, for example. Where you have, for example, a project on the focus is on the hydrogen pipeline, green hydrogen pipeline, where the renewable energy generation is not clearly visible in the project, even if the hydrogen that is included in the project is a green hydrogen, but there is no renewable energy generation as a result of the CBRS project. As a result of the CBRS project, you have to have the energy generation. In that case, this is not a CBRS project, so not fitting to the program. The same where you have a case where the project is not at all focusing on the renewable energy generation, where you have clearly not even the an idea of the renewable energy component into the project. So in this case as well, we are in a situation where we are not into in the framework of the renewable energy, the cross-border renewable energy program. So if we move to the next slide, we can have a look a bit why we think, because we've talked a lot about member states, so some of you may think, yeah, but where is the region in all that? This map you can find online in the MOT website, Mission Opérationnelle Transfrontalière. There are very interesting maps on regions there. Thanks, I saw also among the participants some representative from the MOT. It's very interesting to see how dynamic is the situation around Europe when you look at the regional cooperation, the cross-border cooperation. Not only you have also macro-regional cooperation, so to say, also more distance cooperation. So the one we were talking about at the beginning. So when you have a project without connection, well, you can have also these scenarios. Looking at the dynamism there, you have a lot of European Grouping of Territorial Cooperation, GCT. You have really a variety of typology of cooperation, more networks types, more or less formalized or not formalized via the case the case of the GCT, but more on a case by case situation. So we can see clearly the possibility of cross-border regions, notably, to work around also in the energy sector within the framework of the CBRS program. So, for example, these are just really examples. The cross-border district heating that could be carried out at regional level between two bordering regions, where you see, for example, the possibility. There is potential, or the potential it's complementary. For example, you may have on one side a potential of renewable energy production, on the other side maybe not the same potential, but an opportunity because, for example, on the other side there is a post-industrial region that needs to be converted, or there is a region where you have a lot of heavy industry there that needs to be decarbonized, but not so much space, for example, to install new renewable energy generation. So maybe the one region could be the one producing the renewable energy and physically transfer part of it to the region that needs to decarbonize, for example. You can have this kind of setting, but also cross-border renewable installations, as I was saying earlier on, where you have optimal sites that are on the border. That's typically happening on the sea, but it can happen also on the land border. And also you can have also more, so to say, more macro-regional type of project where you want to set up a green hydrogen value chain. So as I was saying, so where you have regions or areas where you have heavy industry to be decarbonized, and you want to create a chain where the green hydrogen is produced somewhere else via better condition of renewables, and it is then consumed elsewhere where you have the heavy industry to be decarbonized. You can see also at a lower scale in the next slide, on at municipality level, you have lots of examples of cross-border municipality or greater municipality areas in Europe. You have a lot of them between France and Germany. You have quite a lot also between Germany and Poland, and more or less everywhere in the Baltics. In Central and Eastern Europe, you have it also in the Iberian Peninsula. So Europe has got a lot of borders and also a lot of municipalities and urban areas around that. And if you click on the animation, we can see also the one case where you have, and Paul will show it later, the case of Görlitz. So two municipalities across the border between Germany and Poland. They applied for a project on CBRS, and they were selected, and they are in the list. And Paul will talk about it a bit later in the following presentation. So there are quite a lot of possibilities. There's also at lower scale, so more at urban level, where you can connect two systems, heating, for example, but also on electricity, and where you have different potential from one side of the border to the other side of the border. You can have on one side a different energy mix, so a potential for a technology that can be biomass and geothermal, for example, and on the other side of the border you may have a different possibility, a different technology on renewable, and there it can be interesting to combine into a single cross-border project, because eventually it is possible that the two technology compensates. So when one is high in the production on one side, maybe the other one is low, and the reverse, and you can ensure a better security of supply of your electricity via renewable energy sources. Okay, so we can have a look. Yeah, so what can the cross-border renewable energy project program do for your region? The way I said it already, you can step up in your cross-border regional cooperation by widening the cooperation into the energy field. Often you have historical cooperation, for example, developed via Interact programs and other programs on cooperation. There you have historical ties that started with a project where you eventually developed a strategy, a protocol, a vision together, for example, or you may have developed pilot projects in your Interact project, for example, and then you are now ready at commercial level. So the technology and the setup, it's clearly now at commercial level, and you want to go for a fully fledged plan, for example, on one side or the other side of the border in the renewable energy generation. Clearly, the previous type of program like Interact cannot cover these because it's wide and big investment, but you are ready with your concept and the technology is ready in the commercial state, and you want to scale it up. So and you can try it out with the cross-border renewable energy program in this case. So we can help you do a step further and really get into the possibility of energy production cross-border. We can have a look at the next slide. So why is it fitting the CBRS program? There we clearly the CBRS program, it's part of the CEF, so the Connecting Europe Facility program, and some of you may have heard about it, the program, and thought first, well, it's not for us because it's more member state level. Historically, it is the case for CEF, but we are talking about CBRS, so the renewable windows, which is which is new, and you know that the renewable is decentralized by its nature. So you have much more potential of decentralized generation of renewables. In some cases, depending also on the administrative setup of your country, the regional level has a clear competence to work on that, on the production or to facilitate it. So that's why we think that the program can be fit for you. And what is important for the program is that regions and cities, they know the territory, they know what is your asset. You know clearly where there can be potential of production. You know clearly where there are regions that are looking for stronger cooperation on the other side of the border, where there is a stronger potential on one side and eventually there are complementary opportunity from one side or the other of the border. So we think that it's also very relevant to have also this level, and we'll see also an example of a CBRS project at this scale. And also because cooperation, and typically cross-border cooperation, it's a cooperation that was that's been implemented since a long time ago at regional level already. The example of Interact programs, where they've been working on cooperation, cross-border cooperation, together with the regions and cities in the last 30 years, it's an important example. So we think that cooperation at cross-border level can really be fostered by the regional authorities there around in Europe. Yeah, so we can see the type of call, and then I will stop with that. So first of all, let's talk about the status. So the middle part of the slide. So the status call, it's open now. There is regularly a call once a year, more or less. That's the pace. Currently, there is a call open, and it's open until the 3rd of May. If you are interested to know it further, you can find in the program websites in CINEA all the information. You can download all the documents. You can also download all the presentation of the Info Day, which took place a few weeks ago, and also access to the recording. You can download the frequently asked questions, and also, of course, you are very welcome to get in touch with us in case none of the material available online answered to your doubts, and we will do our best to do so. The next call for status is scheduled for November 2023, so it's indicative. It's still to be, of course, confirmed, but that's more or less the plan in case you think that it's interesting, but you might not be ready for a project already in May. If you get into the list, into the status list, then you will be able to apply for works and studies. So wider opportunity to get financed your project and clearly implement it. So there is extra condition. I think we'll get to that anyhow when it will be most appropriate. Now it's a bit early, but indeed, as she was saying, so specifically for works, so infrastructure works, building up your energy generation plant. There are specific conditions, and typically the non-commercial viability is a crucial one. So the project would not be able to be implemented without the help of the CEF funding. But then we'll come to that when it will be in the list. For studies, there's no such a condition. So even for technical studies, important studies, you will have to be able to apply it, even if, for example, your project will turn out to be commercially viable at some point. But for the studies, there's no specific condition. Stepping ahead, and my last point is on the preparatory study. So the preparatory study call doesn't need any status. So you don't have to be in the list and receive the status to be able to apply for preparatory study call. These are really sort of technical assistant type of call, in the sense that projects are envisaged in the call as small project where you basically want to have a little bit of help to develop your project idea, either in the technical aspect, so you need to get, for example, more data to see whether it is worth going through such a project, or the developing of the cooperation part. Or also can include, of course, both elements in the same project. So the next occasion to apply for a preparatory study call should be in September, October 23, subject is to be confirmed. So stay tuned in our channel. So we will, of course, widely communicate on that. If you want to have a look at the previous info days on the preparatory study calls and all the material there, you can of course, you're most welcome to do it. So it's everything online, and you can have a look there. But there, the requirements are much less important, so to say. So these are the type of code we implement via the program, and they are regularly open. So throughout the year, you normally have more or less one for each of the type. At least this is foreseen for the moment. But all the dates are to be confirmed. I will stop here and then hand it over to Paul, who will drive you through some example of the project that have been approved so far. I hope it's already more concrete after this presentation, but it will be even more concrete with Paul's presentation, please.
Thank you very much, Gianluca. So my goal here is, so I work also for the CBLS team at CINEA, and today I'll just give you a small presentation about the variety of projects that have already been selected, both for preparatory study financing, but also for the CBLS status. And you will see the projects which have been selected already during the first year of the implementation of the CBLS program. They already reflect the variety of projects that are being developed both at municipal level, regional level, and state level, and also for a variety of technologies. So we are already very pleased about the projects which have been selected. And after I will reiterate the timeline of CBLS if you are looking to apply for funding. And of course, later on, we will address the questions that you have already set in the group chat. But we also want to engage in the discussion with you to really hear about the challenges that you are maybe encountering in setting up such projects, and answer your more general questions if you have about the eligibility criteria and so on. So during the first round of calls of 2022, so which was the first ever time that CBLS was implemented, the first call was about preparatory studies, and 2 preparatory studies were selected, and which I will present later on. And then 3 projects, have been selected to obtain the CBLS status. And so now those 3 projects are now available to eligible to apply for works and also technical studies funding, for which the call is still open and will close on the 23rd of February. So if I start with the 2 preparatory studies projects which have been selected, and as we said before, those studies are very early studies. So the funding that's given is really to overcome the technical barriers for cooperation, or also to have a first understanding of the future costs of the projects. And so the first project that was selected for the funding is the Ene Regio Sobos that you see at the screen. And Ene Regio Sobos is a project that is taking place in southern Bavaria, and in cooperation with the federal state of Salzburg in Austria. So if you look on the map here, all the circled regions in black are all the different regions of Euro-region, of that area. And so this project concerns the Euro-regions of Innsbruck, Salzburg, and Inntal, which are highlighted in the red square here. And basically the aim of the project here is to, in the long term, establish cross-regional district heating, macro-regional district heating. And at this stage, the CEF funding is given to this project to firstly help finance the heat demand map, and also the heat supply map. And these 2 different data sets will enable the project developers to then establish the overall cost of the project, to then maybe later on apply for CBLS status and obtain funding for studies and work. Then the second project, which obtained funding for preparatory studies, is a GORO project. So this project is more an interstate project between Estonia and Latvia. And here the project, the financing is being sought for a conceptual engineering study to develop an offshore project in the Gulf of Riga. So here, financing is given to finance, for instance, technical survey reports, cost evaluation reports to then start the project. So again, very early stage project, pre-feasibility stage, and so those are the two projects that were selected. And as Gianluca highlighted before, the next call for these preparatory studies should open in September this year. And then moving on to the three projects which have acquired the status. Here, this is a very interesting projects because they all cover the array of cooperation that is possible under the CBS framework. So municipal, macro-regional, interstate. So the first project that you see here, the girl is Skorzelek, Polish-German cross-border city, has applied for status in 2022 and obtained it for a cross-border zero-carbon district heating project. And so this project is already at a mature stage, and it consists of combining 7 renewable energy generation technologies: solar PV, thermal, ambient air, biomass, biogas, and sewage treatment, all of which will be used to develop a cross-district district heating. The third project that you see, Elwind, this is an interstate project between Latvia and Estonia. And again, this is a hybrid offshore project, which has an envisaged capacity of between 0.7 and 1 gigawatt capacity for an overall estimated annual production of renewable energy of 3 terawatt hours. So quite a big project, envisaging between 100 and 180 wind turbines. And here again, this project obtained the status in 2020. And finally, the third project, which is Cicerone. Cicerone, also a very innovative project, which is an alliance for cross-border European green hydrogen value chain. So to put it simply, basically 4 member states are cooperating, Italy, Spain, Germany, and Netherlands, to establish a cross-border hydrogen value chain. So in this project, Italy and Spain and also Germany will be generating renewable energy via either solar or onshore wind facility. And then this renewable energy production will then be converted in hydrogen, and this hydrogen will be cracked into ammonia, transported to Netherlands, and re-cracked to be transported as hydrogen for Germany. So quite a complex project indeed. And here again, the CEF funding is available to them to finance both the renewable energy technologies, but also the ancillary components for the transport of such generated energy. So at CINEA, we developed a great tool, which is the CBS Transparency Platform. If you're curious to look at the 3 projects which have obtained the status in 2022, if you as a project developer also obtain the status, you will be showcasted on this platform. And essentially, you can see here the different components of the projects which have obtained the status and which are now available for funding. I can even show you now, if you want, the way the website is portrayed, so you can get a really good picture. I hope you can see my screen. So here you will see the Elwind project, which I mentioned before. So if you click on the project in itself, it's loading. Maybe I'll refresh the page so it works. There we go. So here, if you click on the project, you can really access the specificities of the project. You can see where the offshore plants are planned to be installed, the different capacities and etc. Here, I don't know why normally it should show up. I'm sorry about this. But here, basically, you can filter on the right by the different technology types. So here, was the Elwyn project. Ah, there we go. So here you can click on the fish and you have the details of the project. And here you can see, for instance, the district heating project in the cross-border city of Gurley Skozelex, and etc. and etc. And here you have the different components of the Cicerone project with the solar PV generation in Italy, the ammonia cracking in Spain with onshore, and here the ammonia cracking in the Netherlands, which is then transported as hydrogen to Germany. So really, you can see here, just with this first call, this first round of calls that we've had in 2022, the variety of projects that are eligible for funding under this new window of financing of CBLS. And we are also looking to, of course, hear from you and maybe from the projects that you are thinking to develop and to engage in discussions with you. Here you can see again the timeline for this year. So in 2023, the call for status open on the 10th of January. The deadline will be the 3rd of May. And sorry for the text model up here, but basically it says that at the end in October, November, the 2023 CBLS list should be adopted. And so those projects will be eligible to apply for funding for works and studies in November. And the separate call for preparatory studies, so the studies which are very early stage, will be held in September 2023. I hope this has given you a few examples of the projects that have been financed and the variety of cooperation agreements that already exist in this first window of CBLS. Here, if you follow these two QR codes, you can access the CBLS status score, the code which is open at the moment, and also the general link to the page to our website. And now maybe we can start answering the questions which have been asked in the chat. Vasil, if you are still here, there's a first question for you concerning, Teresa, would you like to read it out?
Yeah, sure. So we had a first question in the chat about the guarantees of origin. I would like to ask if there will be a strategy about guarantees of origin AEB in the EU. Currently, as an investor to wind and solar farm, we limit investing into countries which are not members of AEB. Countries as Romania and Bulgaria with great wind and solar potential are not members of AEB for guarantees of origin. That is why we cannot sell produced electricity on the European market via PPA. And declared as green energy. This limits us and makes projects much less competitive than in countries with guarantees of origin from AEB.
Vasil, if you would like to answer this question, please.
Are you still with that, Vasil? We lost the connection with him. We'll try to restore. Yeah, I see it. It's only reconnecting. Now, as we come back to that one in a moment, because it's more, policy type of point from Vasil, we can move to the next one. And as soon as Vasil is back, you can show us signs, so we come back to this one.
Yeah, I will continue with other questions which Gianluca is going to take. First one is concerning the scenarios presented by Gianluca. Gianluca, could you please confirm which scenario e-mobility charging points would rather fall under? scenario 1 or scenario 2?
Okay, thank you. So indeed, this is interesting because indeed the CBRS program is also open to the transport sector. So that's also possible, but it's important to understand that what will be the core of the CBRS project is really the renewable energy generation in a wider framework. If the project is to create new renewable energy generation of electricity, typically, to then charge the new installation of e-mobility, the CBRS will take over the part on the rest generation, the ancillary aspects. But then, what comes to the infrastructure of, for example, the charging stations for cars or for more heavy-duty vehicles, then that would fall outside the project itself. However, there are even in the CEF program, notably the CEF transport program, windows that are completely dedicated to the charging the infrastructure. So in that case, for example, you can put in synergies different programs and funds and have the CBRS pushing forward the renewable energy part and have another project in CEF transport, for example, but in other programs as well on regional level, for example, take over the financial or help or get co-financing for the mobility infrastructure, so typically the e-chargers and all what is around this type of infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have another question on the form of company that can apply for the call. Shall there be two separate companies or can they create a joint company?
Okay, yeah, both are possible. It depends what suits best the project that you have in mind. So in some cases, you might want to do a joint venture specifically for the project because of legal certainty for any reasons that you can have. In that case, it's perfectly fine to have a joint venture as part of the consortium, or even the sole beneficiary where it's applicable. Or you can also come with two companies from one side of the border and the other side of the border, being part of a consortium of two or more beneficiaries. Both are perfectly suitable. It depends really on what is the best structure you consider for the project in case.
Then we have a question on one of the projects selected under the status call. Could you please explain between which parties was the first project, and that concerned Görlitz and Skozhelec?
I think Paul, you are putting back probably the slides just to show, but so for the Görlitz Skozhelec, if that was the question, otherwise please write us in the chat. So Görlitz Skozhelec it's two cities there, one on the German side, Görlitz, and the other on the Polish side, Skozhelec. Very integrated urban cross-border area. There you have the municipalities and typically even the utility companies that are participating in the project. So those that will be implementing really and setting up, for example, the new renewable energy generation on both sides. So you can have consortiums where you have several actors there, and it's perfectly good to have it all integrated, or more focused consortiums where you have really the implementer there. So any of these options are possible.
Another question concerns the advantages of CBRS over Interreg A programs. And the question is, in case a project would be about a physically cross-border RES generation or transmission infrastructure that might be eligible as well in an Interreg A program, what advantages might have an application under CEF in comparison with Interreg A?
Okay, so Vasil said it clearly at the beginning. We need all type of programs to really push further the agenda of decarbonization of Europe, and so all programs have their own specificities, and there is a lot of option out there, but we really need to go fast, quick, and well. So it's good to have also several programs that are touching similar elements. For the Interreg A, I think we really have to think about synergy between the two. So typically Interreg, they've been really successful in pushing forward the agenda of the cooperation between two borders, but often the scale of project are budget-wise and also in terms of concrete implementation on the ground fairly limited. It's a first step. But also, yeah, the whole budget of a single Interreg program rarely goes beyond 100 or 200 million of euro of the whole budget. Usually the average scale of project in Interreg, we are talking about 2-3 million euro, or not so much more. So probably in the case of the CBRS, the main difference is the scale of the pilot project that you may finance in the CBRS if you are successful to get the status and then go through the studies and works. The scale varies very much, of course. When you look at the 3 projects that we have granted the status, they vary a lot in terms of budget, but we are not talking about 1-2 million project. We are more talking about 50, 100, 200 million euro project. Depends very much, but this is the scale. So a single CBRS project as a whole, not the CEF financing, but as a whole, can very well be beyond a whole budget of a single Interreg program easily. Another advantage or complementarity, because of course we are not putting into competition programs, we are really putting into synergies, is that CEF is not such, or it's not considered as such as state aid support. So, which is not necessarily the case for Interreg. It depends. Of course, there are general block exemption regulations that plays into there, but it's member state support. Interreg, in the case of CEF, is directly Commission support, so it's not. It's more relaxed on the state aid part. So I see these as a main element of differences. But again, I stress that we are talking about synergies between the two, and the idea via the CBRS is to help you make a step forward. So in Interreg, very often you manage to set up a very really the beginning of a structured cooperation at cross-border level. You may have done also pilot project on the ground with also small-scale infrastructure. In the case of CEF, we are talking about commercially ready project that has to be deployed large scale to produce renewable energy in the case of the CBRS. So I think we are talking about 2 different scale of projects. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Gianluca. If you do wish to ask more questions, feel free to either open your mic. Well, I mean, you need to raise your hand and I will grant you the access. If you'd like to ask more questions, engage in a discussion maybe about any projects that you might be thinking of developing. Later in time, you can also keep in touch with us. Feel free to reach out at this email address. We will answer any questions that you may have. You can also just send us an email if you wish to be added to our newsletter, where we send regular updates about the upcoming calls, etc. and etc. So I'll probably wait for another.
No, just just to come back on the first question from on the guarantee of origin. I have some news from Vasil who got disconnected, so I'm afraid that this one we have to come back in written, and we can reply also when we send around the slides to participants, so that we cover that one as well. I don't know if there are new questions for the moment. No. can stay online a few minutes more to just waiting if you have other questions. If you want to, if you want also just open the mic and raise a question, it's also possible.
Good morning. I have a question, but I think it's equal.
1 second. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. My name is Claire Gauthier. I'm working for the German Energy Agency on the Team European Cooperation. And I had a question concerning the benefits or cost savings compared to other projects only in one member state. What kind of benefits are you referring to? Also, should they, for an application, be quantitatively evaluated, qualitatively? What are the requirements in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I can start and complement. Thank you. Yeah, very, very relevant, important. The benefits are, or the elements that should be included in the cost-benefit analysis are the ones included in these staff working documents that I was referring to earlier in the presentation. Mainly, we are talking about quantitative benefits, things like cost of energy, grid connections, cost, greenhouse gas emissions savings. So these are the type of elements that are included in the CBA. There are also some more qualitative elements like innovation, for example. That's typically something that cannot be, or can with certain degree of difficulty, be quantified. But mostly we are talking about quantifiable benefits. And compared to the counterfactual, so the idea is that the project is free to set up or to imagine a counterfactual project. So the preferred option is that there is a standardized counterfactual, meaning a really similar project in the type of its nature, for example, the technology, the scale, but to be implemented not only at local level or in one member state. But of course, it depends on the type of project. The project can also set up a project-specific counterfactual where, for example, a similar project will not be feasible without cooperation. Or for example, without cooperation, that given technology doesn't exist or is simply not cost efficient at all in one member state. That's why you want to enter into a cooperation agreement, and in those specific cases, you can come up with a project-specific counterfactual. But yes, we are talking about quantified benefits, overall societal benefits, so because there are indeed carbon emission cuts and air pollution, for example, elements, but there are also some qualitative ones.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so to be clear, when you look at the code page, you will see you can download all the templates, and in the CBA there is a predefined template. So as project promoter, you need only to insert your calculation and the cost of energy, for example, the cost of grid connection, all that, and the whole is automatically calculated. So there's quite a deal of facilitation there. For example, the projection over the years for the duration of the project, it's automatically factored in. The discount rate, for example, all that is applied automatically by the tool. And next to that, you have a document annexed to the application form where you can explain the rationale of your calculation, so that then once the project is evaluated, we understand what was your logical path that led you to this calculation. Just reading, there's not a question. Okay.
Okay, there's another question from Cynthia. We have already collected info on common obstacles that hinder CBC in the field of energy, electricity, which can be read in the publication of all the regions for the European Green Deal. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed, there is a lot of material there. Typically, the B solution, it's a very, very interesting source. We are also using a lot to understand the situation. That comes back to the knowledge at regional level. So there is quite a lot of really a great deal of knowledge on the situation on the regions, both what are the obstacles, for example, typically legal obstacles, lack of common ground for rules across borders. There's still a long way to go there in Europe. The CBRS is yet another important tool we think to help you give, first of all, a framework, a political framework and a legal framework to further develop the cooperation.
So there's a new question from Armin. Is there any obstacle for an EU member state stakeholder to apply together with a partner from a Western Balkan country, example Serbia?
Yeah, so it is possible to cooperate between member state and third countries. So that's one of the options that is foreseen in the Renewable Energy Directive. But there are specific conditions for third countries. So for third countries, there has to be a physical link, and we are talking about electricity sector. So that the electricity that is produced, for example, by a renewable energy installation in the third country, for example, it is consumed in the EU. So there are specific conditions there, and other conditions. I won't go into detail on that, but really this is the key condition actually. But it is possible. So it's one of the options. It's also to indeed look at the external borders of the EU. Maybe one thing just to say, if after, because for many of you probably this was the first let's say time you got into the details of the CBRS program. So in case your organizations, or I see some quite a lot of umbrella organization also there representing cross-border regions, there are a lot indeed of instances there. So if you want to follow up, and for example you found such a workshop useful and you want to dig further, we can of course explore also further opportunity to address the topic at more regional angle. So happy to receive your proposals as well. I see, I think somebody wants to intervene.
There's a question from Veronique. Hi, are there any possible combinations with the European Investment Bank loans?
Yes, so thank you for the question. In principle, it is possible to combine support in Connecting Europe facility with EIB loan. So, or which can be, let's say, a dedicated or separate loan of the EIB, or it can be also under the umbrella of InvestEU. So yes, it is perfectly possible. If that helps to, close the financial gap for a project to be realized, the combination of the two is clearly possible.
Okay, another question from Lou Anne. Where can we find the specific conditions for third countries?
We can also put maybe the link, or if you go also in the program webpage. So they're all listed in the Renewable Energy Directive. So it's Article 11, if I recall correctly. I may be wrong, but that article really specified all the conditions for third countries. So, but as I said, the main point is this is the physical connection. But then there are some other aspects regarding, for example, human rights respects and these more horizontal aspects there. If you go in the CBRS program web, so the page of the CBRS status code, you will have all in the background documents all the list of the main legislation that is applicable there, and you find also the direct link to the renewable energy directive.
We have it also in the FAQ.
And yeah, we have also in the same page you have the FAQ to download, so it's a PDF document, and you have a specific question and answer on the third country conditions.
So I just added the link to the status code page in the chat if you would like to have a look at it. We have another 10 minutes for questions. Do feel free to open your mic, send them in the chat.
Okay, as there are no more questions, we would like to thank you for being with us here today. We will be, as agreed, sending you the reply to the first question along with a link to the recording of this session and the PowerPoint presentation that you were able to follow today. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Cool. Bye-bye.